We do. Here's Ryan Kennedy, and Ryan says, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think of the LA Kings trading for Pierre-Luc Dubois and their goalie situation? They gave up too much to get Dubois."
Well, they paid a price to get Dubois, but this is an established young guy. I think he's 25. He potted 27 goals on a really bad Winnipeg Jets team. And before that, I mean, he played really, really well up in Ottawa. And of course, he was in Nashville. They paid a price, but they are so deep. They may have the deepest collection of center icemen of anybody. Because you add Dubois, a sniper, to Kopitar, who's a superstar, to Adrian Kempe, had 43 goals last season, and the teenager Quentin Byfield, been a little slow to develop, but he's only 19 or 20. They are so deep down the middle. So I think it was a pricey price they paid to get him. I don't understand the decision to let Joonas Korpisalo go. He carried them through the NHL playoffs, and the Kings kind of became a surprise team. They let him go, and he, the ex-Nashville Predator winds up in Ottawa. They didn't want to pay him $5 million a year. Now, that's the price you pay for a star goalie, and Korpisalo was a star in Nashville, and what he did at the end of the season, I thought was pretty impressive. I was disappointed there. So I don't know if they created a hole, but the two goaltenders are Cam Talbot, who's kind of a journeyman who's had some success, and obviously Phoenix Copley, who they picked up off the street that played really well for large chunks of the season. But when they got to the postseason, the most important time of the year, who was between the pipes? Joonas Korpisalo. So, Ryan, I don't agree with the Korpisalo thing, but it may well have just been driven by the cap that you can't pay everybody everything they want.
Yeah, I kind of wonder how the NHL would kind of set up their roster, because they bring in these players, on these shifts. Are they going to have all those stars in one shift, or they just sort of spread them around?
Well, you'll have Dubois will be on one line, and I don't know who his wingers are going to be at this point in time, but they have so much firepower now on each of these different lines they have. Your defensive pairings are pretty stable. You play your first pair, your second pair, and then sometimes you play a third pair, and those guys, they take their shifts with each other. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you juggle the wingers with a different center, but training camp will be fun. But you go find a depth chart of the LA Kings, and again, you're talking to a hockey fanatic. Mm-hmm. I know everything that I need to know. You look at the depth chart and you say, damn, that's a pretty good LA Kings team that Rob Blake has put together over just a 2.5-year span. Okay, next question.
Okay, moving on down the list. Here's Manny. He says, hey, with the All-Star break here, which team will end up winning the National League West, and which National League West team will win at the trade deadline?
Well, historically, the Padres have always been a winner at the trade deadline, but they don't have anything to trade unless they're going to start moving the guys at lower A in Rookie League. And I just don't think you want to do that. Last week, Peter Seidler and AJ Preller, and we talked about it on our podcast last week, they just pronounced, we believe in these guys. We believe in the back of the baseball card because they have done it. We're not going to blow this thing up. There won't be any firings, and I don't think there's going to be any massive trades. Can they nitpick to pick up a role player or maybe an insurance policy pitcher? Yeah, but he'd be fourth or fifth in the rotation. There's not going to be a Max Scherzer out there that somebody's going to try to trade for. So I think at this point in time, the Padres have the roster they have. Now the question is, what we saw just prior to the break, is that going to continue? And keep in mind, Manny, you go look at the schedule. Look at the next 10 that they play all on the road to start the second half of the season. By August 1st, they'll either be in this race or this thing will be over. So that's where we are there. And in terms of who's going to win the West, tell you what, the damn Dodgers just are hammering home runs. And even though their pitching staff is ripped by injuries and the bullpen has been Jekyll Hyde, the Dodgers are the Dodgers. Arizona's kind of hit a wall. They're not where they were before. Part of it's got to do with Connor Corbin getting banged up, has injured a shoulder twice. But their pitching staff looks like it's starting to operate on fumes. And there's still 70-plus games to go in the season. And when you have young teams, you say, John, hey, what a great first half the Cincinnati Reds had, or what the Orioles have done, or geez, how cool was what Pittsburgh did to be in first place for 3 or 4 weeks. But if you're really young or if you're thin, it all catches up to you in the end.
Well, it makes you wonder if the Diamondbacks are going to be the ones that might go all in to get a big deal done, because they've got a lot of young prospects that they could trade.
Could be. Trade deadline will be the 31st. I'm always in favor of being aggressive. If I know what I need and I know somebody's out there, I go get them now. I don't wait till the 31st because the price can change. Somebody could jump in front of you at the end, but you make the deal now. And what it does is it gives you a starting pitcher that might give you 3 extra starts in July before you ever get to the trade deadline. And 3 quality starts from a guy coming in the middle of your rotation. That's a big difference maker going
Huge.
forward. Okay, next question.
Okay, here we go. This is from John Hopkins. He says the New York Times just laid off their sports department. Is this the beginning of a trend?
I think it's happening everywhere. I was shocked. There's something going on with the LA Times too. They're changing the whole structure of their sports section. I mean, you and I grew up sitting on the front porch of our houses reading the newspapers back in the day, and we would
Yeah.
look at the box scores and we'd look at the standings and the probable pitching matchups. LA Times is removing all that from the sports section. It's just going to be big pictures and enterprise reporting. Their deadlines are going to be earlier, which means they're not going to be writing about the Dodger game last night or the Lakers. Now, maybe that'll change. Maybe it'll be such a bloody big uproar that the LA Times will give ground. I don't know who's advising them. It makes no sense to me at all. Granted, I mean, you talk to beat writers, the deadlines of these papers is so much earlier now. They're writing more feature stories and getting in a snippet of what happened in the game in the 9th inning. I don't think it's good for journalism. The New York Times thing is shocking to me because it is a great paper. It does have a great history. But understand this, John, that the New York Times purchased the Athletic website. So if you're a sports fan, if you're not going to subscribe to the New York Times because there won't be a sports section per se, you subscribe to the Athletic because they do in-depth long-form stories on everything. You know, some game stories, but long-form evaluations of the Yankees at the trade deadline, or how many pitchers have had Tommy John surgery, or what's going to happen next in the National Football League. And the subscriptions are fairly affordable, and it's all online. It's not a printed newspaper. Some of us old school guys like the feel and the smell of a newspaper every morning at breakfast. I know you do. I saw those
Yeah.
papers out in the garage.
That's all the ink on your fingers when you were done with that. But this isn't the beginning of the trend. This trend's been going on for decades. And we talked about ESPN and all those layoffs that they had. It just seems that the New York Times isn't my go-to place for sports information. No. So it makes sense they're going to cut that. But people are enjoying podcasts, right? People are getting their information online. People are finding these niche providers that just focus on the Yankees or the Mets. They don't want to get a generalist like the Times to do that. I mean, the Times covers a different caliber of, or a different category
readership
of readers talking about world issues. So yeah, the landscape is going to continue to be blown up. Local TV, local media. I mean, it's incredible how everything's changed. You've lived it.
I survived it. I was wounded by it, but yes, I did. I'm disappointed because I'm a big New York Times guy, and I grew up on Long Island, and the Times was really special. There's still great journalism being done. I'll be honest with you. If you look at what the New York Times does in terms of covering the globe and in covering politics and what's happened in the election and all that, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe. Now, for me, the shocker is the LA Times and what they're doing. I don't understand the philosophy of what they think they're going to sell the public, all these puff pieces and flare stories rather than actual hard news. LA Times is number 2 in the market. And look at what's happened in the East Coast and great journalism being done in so many great places. And the LA Times is going to do something radical. I'll give you a prime example. LA Times Sunday sports section, I think, was down. It's going to change this weekend. I think it was down to 6 or 8 pages. Union Tribune, the Union Tribune on Sunday, and I like their Sunday section in the new sports editor. Union Tribune has gone sometimes 12-page sports sections. Now, some of that is a lot of national stuff, but they do have, the local features and a local columnist and some opinion pieces, and obviously all the notebook stuff covering the Padres ad nauseum. But this is the LA Times. We're talking about the Sacramento Bee. We're talking about the LA Times.
Yeah.
And to me, it's changed. So I'll be interested to see what the uproar with that is going to be. On we go. A couple more here on Fans Forum.
Okay. So this is from Emmanuel. He says, what's going on with the Pac-12 media rights deal? Where does it leave San Diego State?
I think San Diego State's going to get an offer. I don't know how quickly that offer will take place. One of the headlines we ran last week was lawyer up. because that's what's going to happen between San Diego State and the Mountain West Conference about did they resign. Conference says, yes, you did. You owe us $17 million exit fee right now. San Diego State says no. But then the story that was dug up that the president of San Diego State went to a president's council meeting in Hawaii and said, we probably are going to leave, and I'm saying goodbye to all you now. Well, that to me then followed up by what she actually wrote in a letter has kind of led us to this point. Pac-12 Media Day is, I think, July 21st. And the push that I hear is they're trying to get this media deal done for the 10 remaining teams to announce at the Pac-12 Media Day. And then I think once that's solidified, then there will be the offers to San Diego State, and I believe it's going to be SMU to take this thing to 12. But all part of this has to get each of the current members, the Oregons and the Washingtons, the power schools, to agree to the land of rights grant deed, which is going to lock them into the conference for the length of the new media deal. I don't know if that's happened yet. It's got to happen before the deal can be announced. So it's complex. San Diego State's got at least one more year in the Mountain West Conference. I don't think they're going to stay there, and I think that they'll pay the $7 million or 17 mil, and then they'll become a member of the Pac-12 somewhere in the next couple of years. But the big issue is, does San Diego State really have the resources? Do they have the pot of gold in the NIL checking account to be able to compete? Because if the University of Oregon is offering its star players 40 to 50,000 to be part of the NIL and come play for the Ducks, where's San Diego State going to get that money? That to me is a big, big issue.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where that goes too, because hopefully a lot of it will come from the ticket revenue and some of the other marketing deals they can do. But I'm curious to see how this Pac-12 media deal goes, because they're not going to get all the marquee stations, the ABCs and the ESPNs. I'd imagine a good portion of the games are going to be streaming. And if they're not on Amazon or some big streaming platform, it might be on a few rinky-dink ones there too, especially if Washington State is playing, Arizona State.
Yeah, it's a huge issue as to how they're going to distribute. And this is the genesis of the mess they're in, because that former commissioner, Larry Scott, was the guy that planted the flag and says, Pac-12 network, we're going to do great things. And they never got full distribution. They were not on DirecTV.
Mm-hmm.
It was subscription. And they never got distribution comparable to what the Big Ten network became. My God, they were the first one out of the gates. What the SEC has done, the ACC, the Big 12, they were so far behind the curve, and the debt that they took on to create this, and it never, ever worked. And then Larry Scott got shoved out the door. The end result, he cost the conference an enormous amount of money. He cost the conference its prestige. And now, of course, in the middle of the night, you lose USC and UCLA. How about two more here before we wrap our bonus coverage on a Monday?
Okay, let's get a couple of social media folks involved here. And let's go with this one here. They talk about sports media. This is from DeFax No Nonsense. And he says, Pat McAfee got big versus nothing changed for Stephen A. Smith contractually because he re-signed with ESPN when he fired Max.
Well, Stephen A. Smith has got a popularity base that's pretty strong. Signed him to a mega contract. I don't know if he's a one-trick pony. I don't know if this is going to get tired after a while. People say he's on all the time talking about all these different things. Does he really have credibility, or is he just a yeller and screamer? That, to me, is a big issue. I can't watch him very much because it just turns into the brothers and this and that. McAfee created something that was really unique, and he's done it on the social media platform, and it's exploded. Now he goes to ESPN. Will people gravitate and watch him every day of the week? I don't know. The turnover there has been just terrible. There's so many good journalists that have lost their job, but I understand what Disney has had to do because of the rights fees have just exploded. The rights fees they have to pay, they got to take the money from somewhere to put it there, and they start to cut staff. But at the end of the day, when you cut talent, it catches up to you. And we can't sit there and watch Stephen A. Smith yell and scream every morning, and that's the end-all, be-all of ESPN. And so it's a real tough call. Feel bad for a lot of the people, but a lot of those people have really good careers for a long period of time. I just don't know journalistically if that's what ESPN should be doing, but it's happening everywhere. I mean, CNN has blown up all of its day parts.
Mm-hmm.
Fox News has has turned the thing upside down. The aftermath of the massive lawsuits and the Tucker Carlson fiasco. MSNBC has changed the structure. They're the ones that seem to be on the rise and getting pretty hot. So, as you used the word landscape has surely changed.
Yeah, Stephen A. to me, when he first came on the scene, he was fun. You're like, who is this guy? And he was always talking about LeBron James, and they did the SNL skit on him. But sometimes when Stephen A. is talking about things outside of the NBA, he doesn't really seem to have the knowledge base. I mean, he knows football a bit. He loves walking around Dallas with his cowboy hat on and giving a hard time to the fans.
But that's all shtick.
It's
you need substance here.
Exactly.
I mean, he's made some things. He's been called out nationally, but what the hell are you talking about this player? You don't know what this guy's been doing.
Mm-hmm.
What? And Stephen A., he's got great shtick, but you need substance to match the shtick. And for him just to stand up and just yell and scream every day about different topics, it just, to me, it wears you out watching it. So, not my cup of tea, but then there's people out there, 3 or 4 of them, that don't like me either. So, all right, let's do one more social media.
Okay, this is about the Shohei Ohtani contract. And, you got a lot of heat from people on Instagram and YouTube saying, why only 5 years is the proposal that you put on the table? Here's a comment from Jose Rangel. He says, Artie Moreno is not going to get a lot in return in a trade, because why would you give up the farm if they could just sign him 3 months later? This is not a Soto situation where the Padres would still have 2.5 years of control when trading for him, so they had to give up the farm. Artie gave Trout $430 million years back. Why would Ohtani take anything less? Come on, Lee, you're not being realistic. Let me co-host. I'll help.
You'll spend Artie's money, but understand this. We're talking about a pitcher. We're just not talking about a designated hitter. And you don't give guys 10-year contracts if they might be done with pitching injuries 4 years into the deal. Remember, he's already had Tommy John surgery in the course of his career. There's no argument here that this is the greatest player of modern day times. I mean, he is blown by Aaron Judge and Bryce Harper, whatever. But at the end of the day, part of his ability is on the mound. And I just don't know, with the number of innings he pitches and the wear and tear factor and what he has to do to prepare to be a 2-position player, there's a burnout factor I fear about Ohtani. So I said 5 years, $250 million, based on the fact that pitchers break down. Now, if he can't pitch anymore, that's not to say you can't give him $50 million per season to be my everyday DH or my right fielder. Mm-hmm. But I think the base deal is 5 years, $50 million per season, just to lock him down and keep him. Now, you raise a good point. Why would anybody overpay if he's a walk free agent? But what you do is you go to Artie Moreno. If Moreno indicates we made an offer, he has refused to accept it, we have to trade him. What Moreno does then is he gives the Dodgers. This is sacrilegious to talk about trading with the enemy. Mm-hmm. Give the Dodgers permission to talk to Ohtani's agents about the terms of what an extension deal would be like. And if they agree Ohtani wants to wear Dodger blue instead of Angel red, and you know what the dollar value is, and he's going to sign the extension, then you go back and you say, I want all those pitchers at Oklahoma City, or I want James Outman, the center fielder, or Bush, the young multi-infielder. If I'm going to trade you Ohtani because I've allowed you to reach agreement on an extension with Ohtani because he doesn't want to be here anymore, you got to give me 5 for 1 or 6 for 1. That's how you do the deal. You're not going to trade him so somebody can rent him for 3 months. That's not fair to Ohtani. If I were king, that's what I would do. But first, if I were king, I would make him a magnanimous superstar offer.
Oh, for sure.
So that's where I am. And your response?
My response is I heard that Artie Moreno, no way, no how would he trade him to the Dodgers. It's just like you say, it's sacrilegious. So I'm curious to see what they're going to be doing. The national media they're all saying that the Angels have to trade Ohtani.
I don't think so, because we don't know what's in Ohtani's heart. We
Right.
don't, because he's very retrospective. He's very inclusive. He's very quiet. There's never, ever leakage. His agent conducts a business beneath the curtain. If he wants to stay and they give him a magnanimous offer, then maybe he does stay. I just don't think Ohtani's persona is going to be trade me right now. Damn it. I
No,
don't think
not
that's
at
going to
all.
happen.
Yeah, but we all like the media all make an assumption. Oh, he wants to stay on the West Coast. Oh, he wants to go to Seattle because a lot of other Japanese players have played there. Oh, he doesn't want to be on the East Coast. He's too far away from Japan. I think a lot of these are just assumptions that people are pulling out of the air. So Otani knows who he is and where he fits in the history of baseball. If I'm in his shoes, I go where I want to go. And if that means playing on the East Coast or for the Cardinals or whomever, I don't see why that would be excluded from his situation. So curious to see what Artie Moreno does. But to your point, I agree. Moreno needs to pony up and make an effort, if for nothing else, just to show goodwill to his fan base, because you can't just let the guy walk and get nothing in return.
If the average salary is $50 million, you pay him $50 million. I do it on a shorter term contract because of the injury issue with the pitcher. But if he can no longer pitch, he becomes my designated hitter at age 31 in the rest of his career, and you still pay him $50 million per season. There's always ways to do extensions, but to say I'm going to give you 15 years at $50 million per season, I can't do that. I don't think that's responsible.
He might want only 5 years because 5 years down the road, he might get $75 million a year.
Exactly. Hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed the wide variety of topics we put on the table.